All right, so let's say you're in the middle of a D&D campaign, and your party is getting a little, shall we say, bored with just hacking and slashing their way through dungeons.
Yeah.
How do you, as a DM, shake things up? Add a little spice. Well, you, my friend, need some mini-games in your life.
Yeah.
Just the other week, my group was slogging through a seemingly endless forest. We were tired, grumpy, and about to mutiny against our poor DM, but then he threw a curveball at us, a riddle contest, hosted by a mischievous forest spirit.
Oh, fine.
Let me tell you, the mood shifted instantly. Suddenly, we were all engaged trying to outsmart each other and impress this tricky spirit. My character, a usually stoic paladin, even cracked a joke. It completely revitalized the session.
That's a perfect example of how a well-placed minigame can inject energy and excitement into a D&D session. It's not just about breaking up the monotony, it's about engaging players in new and unexpected ways. And you know, we actually have some fantastic source material to delve into today that explores this very topic. Emily Thorne's article on LitRPG Reads, Spice up your D&D encounters with fun minigames, is a treasure trove of ideas and insights for DMs looking to enhance their campaigns.
Okay, I'm already intrigued. So Emily, tell us, why are these minigames so important? What do they bring to the table besides a break from the usual dungeon crawl?
Well, one of Thorne's key points is that minigames foster creativity, both for the DM and the players. They force everyone to think outside the box, to use their character's skills in ways they might not normally consider.
Right.
For example, instead of relying solely on brute force to overcome a challenge, players might need to use their persuasion skills to win a bet, their history knowledge to decipher a clue, or even their performance skills to impress a crowd.
So it's about tapping into those less used skills and giving players a chance to showcase their characters in a different light. That makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual creativity. Thorne also emphasizes that mini-games encourage teamwork and collaboration.
Okay.
Take the escape the collapsing bridge scenario she describes. Players with different strengths would need to work together, coordinating their actions and using their skills in tandem to get everyone across safely. That kind of collaborative problem solving is pure D&D gold.
I've seen that firsthand too. We once had a mini-game where we had to decipher a series of cryptic messages to unlock a treasure vault. We had a rogue good at picking locks, a wizard who could translate ancient languages, and my paladin who was surprisingly good at spotting patterns.
Nice.
It was amazing to see how we each contributed our unique skills to solve the puzzle. It felt like a real team effort, and it was way more satisfying than just bashing down the door.
That's a perfect illustration of Thorne's point. These mini-games can create those moments of shared accomplishment and camaraderie that are so central to the D&D experience. And you know, it's not just about the practical benefits. Mini-games can also add a lot of flavor and depth to your campaign's narrative.
How so?
Well, they can introduce new characters, factions, and even storylines that enrich the world you've created. Thorne suggests weaving mini-games into the campaign's existing narrative, so they feel like organic parts of the story, not just random diversions.
Gotcha.
For example, instead of having a generic tavern dice challenge, you could tie it to a local gambling ring or a competition between rival guilds. Suddenly, that simple game of chance has real stakes and consequences.
That's a great way to add weight and meaning to those lighter moments in the campaign.
Well, right. It's about making everything feel connected and purposeful.
So we've established that mini-games are awesome. But how do we go about designing them? Are there any guidelines or principles we should keep in mind?
Absolutely. Thorne outlines some key design principles that can help you create minigames that are fun, engaging, and relevant to your campaign. The first principle is simplicity. No one wants to get bogged down in complicated rules in the middle of a session. The minigame should be easy to explain and understand, so players can jump right in and start having fun.
Yeah, I can see how that would be crucial. I've definitely been in games where a minigame felt more like a math lesson than a fun diversion.
Exactly. And Thorne suggests using familiar mechanics whenever possible. For example, you could adapt the rules of a classic card game or a popular board game to fit the D&D setting. That way, players already have a basic understanding of how the game works.
That's a smart approach. It saves time and prevents the game from feeling too disruptive.
Thorne's second design principle is relevance. The minigame should tie into the campaign's narrative, not feel like a random side quest. Think about the setting, the characters, and the overall storyline. How can you create a minigame that enhances those elements and adds to the immersion of the campaign?
So if the party is infiltrating a wizard's tower, a good minigame might involve deciphering magical runes or solving a series of enchanted puzzles, right?
Precisely. It fits thematically. It challenges the player's intellect and problem-solving skills, and it adds a layer of magical intrigue to the adventure. And finally, Thorne emphasizes scalability. The minigame should be adaptable for different group sizes. So whether you have 3 players or 7, everyone can participate and have a meaningful role to play.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's about making sure everyone feels included, and that the minigame doesn't favor certain players over others.
Exactly, and it's about being flexible as a DM. You might need to adjust the difficulty, the number of rounds, or even the rules themselves to accommodate different player counts.
So we've covered the why and the how of minigames. Now I'm dying to know, what are some specific examples that Thorne suggests? She mentions 5 minigames in the article, right?
She does. And they cover a wide range of scenarios and playstyles. We have the Tavern Dice Challenge, which we've already touched on. It's a classic for a reason. It's simple, adaptable, and it can lead to some hilarious role-playing moments. Then there's Escape the Collapsing Bridge, which we also mentioned. This one is perfect for those who love a bit of action and suspense. Imagine a rickety bridge crumbling beneath the party's feet as they race to escape a collapsing dungeon or pursuing monster. Lots of potential for dramatic skill checks and nail-biting moments there.
I can already picture my paladin trying to hold the bridge together with sheer willpower while the rogue scrambles to grab the treasure chest before it plummets into the abyss.
Exactly. It's all about creating those cinematic moments that make D&D so memorable. And then we have the Puzzle Lock, which is all about cracking codes, solving riddles, and using logic to overcome a challenge. It's a great way to test players' mental acuity and their ability to work together to decipher clues.
That sounds like a good one for those players who love to roleplay as brilliant detectives or cunning masterminds.
Absolutely. And the possibilities are endless when it comes to designing puzzles and riddles. You can use ancient languages, cryptic symbols, hidden mechanisms, optical illusions, whatever fits your campaign and your players' interests.
Ooh, and you could even incorporate physical props into the puzzle, like a map with hidden messages, or a set of interlocking rings that need to be arranged in a specific order.
Exactly. The more interactive and tactile you can make the experience, the more engaging it will be for the players.
Okay, I'm already brainstorming ideas for my next campaign. What about the other 2 mini-games Thorne mentions?
Well, she has Monster Poker, which sounds absolutely wild. It's a card game where each card represents a different monster's abilities, and players need to use strategy, bluffing, and a bit of luck to win.
Okay, that's officially on my list of things to try as a DM. How would you even begin to design something like that?
Thorne actually provides some great guidelines. She suggests assigning each monster card a set of stats, such as attack, defense, speed, and special abilities. Then players could use those stats to battle each other, or even to negotiate with creatures or NPCs in the game world.
So instead of fighting a group of goblins, you could challenge their leader to a game of monster poker, with the winner taking the spoils.
Exactly. It's a fun way to introduce an element of chance and strategy to those interactions, and it allows players to use their knowledge of the D&D Monster Manual in a creative way.
I love that. It's like turning the Monster Manual into a deck of cards.
And finally, we have the Magical Maze Run, which is all about navigating a labyrinth filled with traps, illusions, and maybe even some magical creatures.
Ooh, that sounds both exciting and terrifying. Give me the details.
Think of this like a classic dungeon crawl, but with a magical twist. Instead of just navigating a series of rooms and corridors, the players are faced with shifting walls, teleportation portals, and illusions that can lead them astray.
It's like a dungeon that's constantly changing and challenging their perception. You could even incorporate riddles or puzzles that need to be solved to unlock certain pathways, or deactivate traps.
Exactly. And the beauty of this minigame is that it can be scaled to fit any level or campaign setting. You could have a simple maze for low-level characters, or a sprawling, multi-layered labyrinth for experienced adventurers.
It really does seem like there's a minigame for every taste and occasion. Thorne really covered all the bases in her article. But you know, there's one thing I'm still curious about. She talks a lot about designing engaging minigames. But what about the players? How do we as DMs make sure they're actually invested in these minigames? What if they just see them as distractions from the main story?
That's a great question, and Thorne addresses it directly in her article. She emphasizes the importance of connecting the minigames to the characters' backgrounds, motivations, and goals.
So if a player's character is a treasure hunter, they might be more motivated to participate in a minigame that involves finding a hidden artifact, or solving a riddle that leads to a valuable reward.
Precisely. It's about making the players feel like their choices and actions within the minigame have real consequences and rewards that matter to their characters. And beyond tying it to character motivations, you can also integrate minigames into the larger narrative of the campaign.
What do you mean?
Let's say your party is trying to stop a villain from summoning a powerful demon. Instead of just having a series of combat encounters, you could introduce a minigame where they need to gather the ingredients for a ritual to banish the demon. Or they need to decipher an ancient prophecy that reveals the demon's weakness.
That's brilliant. The minigame becomes an integral part of the story, not just a side quest.
Exactly. It raises the stakes, adds a layer of complexity, and makes the players feel like they're actively shaping the narrative.
And it gives them a sense of agency, which is so important in D&D.
Absolutely. Players want to feel like their choices matter, and that their actions have a tangible impact on the world around them.
So we've talked about connecting minigames to character motivations and the overarching story. Are there any other ways to make them more engaging for players?
Well, Thorne also talks about encouraging player creativity. She believes that players should be empowered to approach mini-games with their own unique ideas and solutions, even if those solutions weren't explicitly planned for by the DM.
I love that. It's about embracing those moments of improvisation and letting the players surprise you with their ingenuity.
Exactly. And as DMs, we need to be open to those unexpected solutions. Instead of saying no to something that's not in the rulebook, try to say yes and see where the player's creativity takes you.
I've had some of the most memorable moments in my D&D games when we've gone off script like that. There was one time we were trapped in a dungeon cell, and my paladin decided to use his divine powers to convince the rats in the cell to help us escape.
That's amazing. Did it work?
Surprisingly, yes.
Yeah.
The DM rolled with it, and we ended up having this hilarious scene where we were riding on the backs of giant rats through the dungeon sewers.
That's what D&D is all about, those unexpected moments of creativity and collaboration that create stories you'll never forget.
So how can we as DMs encourage that kind of creative thinking in our mini-games?
While Thorne suggests rewarding players for coming up with innovative solutions, you could give them bonus experience points, a special item, or even just a narrative advantage that helps them in the game.
So if a player comes up with a particularly clever way to solve a puzzle or outwit an opponent in a minigame, you could reward them with a clue that helps them in the main story, or a favor from an influential NPC.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging their ingenuity and showing them that their creativity is valued. And beyond rewards, you can also encourage player creativity by setting up the minigame in a way that invites multiple solutions. Don't be too prescriptive. Give players some wiggle room to experiment and come up with their own approaches.
So instead of saying you need to find the hidden key to unlock the door, you could say the door is locked. How do you get through?
Precisely. It's about framing the challenge in a way that encourages players to think outside the box.
And sometimes the players will surprise you with solutions you never even considered.
Absolutely. That's one of the joys of being a DM. You're constantly learning and being challenged by your players' creativity.
Okay, so we've talked about connecting minigame to character motivations, the overarching story, and player creativity. Is there anything else we should keep in mind when designing and implementing these games?
Well, Thorne does caution against a few potential pitfalls to avoid. One of the biggest risks is overshadowing the main plot. If the mini-games become too elaborate or time-consuming, they can derail the campaign's narrative and leave players feeling like they're not making progress towards their main goals.
That makes sense. It's all about balance, right? Keeping the mini-games fun and engaging without letting them take over the entire session.
Exactly. And Thorne suggests setting clear time limits for the mini-games, ensuring that they connect to the overall campaign goals, and making sure the rewards are meaningful but not game-breaking.
So don't give away a legendary artifact for winning a game of tavern dice, no matter how impressive the roll.
Right. Keep it proportionate to the challenge and the overall scope of the campaign.
And Thorne also warns against making the games too complex.
Yes, simplicity is key. If players are spending more time trying to understand the rules than actually playing, it defeats the purpose.
And that could be a real mood killer. I've definitely been in games where a minigame felt more like a homework assignment than a fun diversion.
Remember, the goal is to engage the players, not overwhelm them.
So keep the rules clear and concise, use familiar mechanics whenever possible, and don't be afraid to improvise and adjust the rules on the fly if needed.
Exactly. It's all about finding that sweet spot where the minigame enhances the campaign without derailing it entirely.
And it's about having fun, both as a DM and as a player.
Absolutely. D&D is a game, after all.
And Emily Thorne's article reminds us that sometimes the best way to enhance that game is to shake things up a bit, introduce some unexpected challenges, and let the player's creativity run wild.
I couldn't agree more.
Now, before we move on, I wanted to touch on another point that Thorne makes about adapting minigames for different campaign styles.
That's a great point. It's so important to tailor the minigames to the tone and theme of your campaign.
Exactly. The same minigame could be played very differently depending on whether you're running a lighthearted comedic campaign or a gritty horror-themed one.
For example, imagine the escape the collapsing bridge scenario we talked about earlier.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
In a lighthearted campaign, the bridge might be rickety and full of slapstick hazards, leading to hilarious mishaps and near misses. You could have characters tripping over loose planks, getting tangled in vines, or even being bombarded by mischievous gremlins.
I can just imagine a scene where one character slips on a banana peel and sends another dangling precariously over the edge.
Exactly. It's all about creating those moments of comedic chaos that make everyone laugh. But in a gritty, horror-themed campaign, that same collapsing bridge could be a truly terrifying ordeal. The stakes would be higher, the descriptions more vivid, and the potential consequences far more dire.
The bridge could be crumbling under the weight of undead hordes, or the players could be pursued by a nightmarish creature that lurks in the shadows below.
Exactly. The atmosphere would be tense and suspenseful, and every step the players take could bring them closer to a gruesome demise.
So it's all about adjusting the tone, the descriptions, and the potential consequences to match the overall feel of the campaign.
Precisely. And Thorne encourages DMs to consider things like the rules, the difficulty, the rewards, and even the setting of the minigame to ensure it aligns with the campaign's style.
That makes a lot of sense. You wouldn't want to throw in a lighthearted drinking contest in the middle of a campaign that's focused on survival and despair.
Right. It would feel jarring and out of place.
So it's all about being mindful of the tone and theme you've established for your campaign and making sure the minigames you choose complement that tone.
Exactly. It's about creating a cohesive and immersive experience for your players.
Now, I have to admit, I'm starting to get a little overwhelmed by all these amazing ideas. There's so much potential for using minigames to enhance our D&D campaigns.
I know what you mean. Emily Thorne's article really opened my eyes to the possibilities.
And it's all thanks to LitRPG Reads and author Paul Bello for publishing such insightful content for D&D enthusiasts.
Absolutely. Their website is a fantastic resource for all things D&D, from character creation to campaign inspiration.
Well, I think we've covered just about every aspect of Emily Thorne's brilliant article.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure diving into the world of minigames with you.
The pleasure is all mine. I always love exploring ways to make D&D more engaging and exciting. And Thorne's insights have definitely given me some new ideas to try out.
Now, before we wrap up, I have a thought-provoking question for our listeners.
Yeah.
What's the most creative or memorable minigame you've ever experienced? Or designed?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. It really gets you thinking about those standout moments in your D&D journey.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear what our listeners come up with. We encourage you to share your answers in the comments below. We might even feature some of your stories in a future episode.
Oh, that'd be fun. Speaking of standout moments, I have to say this deep dive into Emily Thorne's article has been a highlight for me. It's been a fantastic reminder of the power of minigames to elevate the D&D experience.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. I'm already brainstorming ways to incorporate some of these ideas into my next campaign.
Awesome. And you know, it's not just about adding fun and variety to your games. It's about tapping into the core values of D&D: collaboration, creativity, and problem solving.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. These minigames really embody those values in a way that's both engaging and rewarding.
They challenge players to think differently, to work together, and to push the boundaries of what's possible in the game world.
And they give DMs the opportunity to flex their creative muscles.
Yeah.
And build a richer, more immersive experience for their players.
I think Thorne sums it up perfectly in her article when she says that mini-games are a way to spice up your encounters and create moments of unexpected delight.
Totally agree. She hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what they do.
And as we've discussed, those moments of delight can come from a variety of sources. A clever puzzle solution, a hilarious role-playing encounter, a tense chase scene, or even just a moment of shared laughter around the table.
It's those moments that make D&D so special. And it's what keeps us coming back for more week after week.
Definitely.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. But before we sign off, I wanted to give a big shout out to Emily Thorne once again for her fantastic article, and to LitRPG Reads and author Paul Bello for providing such a valuable resource for the D&D community.
Absolutely. If you haven't already, be sure to check out their website for more great content.
And to all our listeners out there, keep those dice rolling. Keep those imaginations firing. And most importantly, keep having fun.
Until next time, happy gaming.